Connecticut. And then I worked at Kent School for the last 8 years. And then this is my second year now at Trinity Pawling as the director of admissions. So as you can see, I've clearly spent quite a bit of time at boarding schools. I am a huge fan of what they do and the education that they provide. And I'll talk more about that education because it's not just in the classroom, but I'll certainly address that. I'm assuming any questions can be sent through the chat function there, and I'll do my best to answer those. And if you have any clarifying questions, happy to address those as well. But a big thank you to Maccabee for setting this up as well and allowing us to share our the good word of Trinity Pawling. So without further ado, we'll continue on here. So this is kind of a brief overview, kind of the at a glance, if you will, the number of students. The actual boarding today is crept up to around 80% boarding, 20% day in this admission cycle. And our international numbers are down a little bit to around 18% that we expect for this fall. So that'll be updated. But that is generally where we are for this year. The unique part about a lot of boarding schools, including ours, are the fact that we are such a small community, overall 300 students, but that allows us to have that small student to faculty ratio, that 5-to-1 that you see there with the average class size around 11 students. And then one thing that I would love to point out is that certainly as an all boys school, which we are, and we have students from all over the country and all over the world, I was excited about the number of students that were trying and involved in our arts program. Certainly we have athletics and we're strong in many of our sports, but the boys feel really comfortable to try new things because they're not worried about who's going to be judging them. And we do have quite a bit of a brotherhood, which you'll hear a little bit more about. I have a video at the end that I'll be able to share with you that the boys kind of put together. But this is just some of the at a glance information that we have here. Location, where are we? So we are located about 60 miles north of New York City. So the map on the left-hand side there shows the eastern side of the United States or northeast of the United States. You can see where we are on the right-hand side of the map in a little bit closer detail. We are really the first boarding school that is north of New York City. It is about an hour and 15 to an hour and 30, depending on traffic, from any of the New York City airports, including Newark, JFK, and LaGuardia. But for anybody flying in internationally, that would be Newark and JFK. Boston is about 3.5 hours for reference. So that's kind of all the way across the state of Connecticut and then obviously across Massachusetts to get to Boston. But a lot of our students will be able to fly in and out of New York. That also gives us the option to get into New York City, which I'll cover shortly. Our campus, even though we're just 60 miles north, we're located in the Hudson Valley region of New York State. We are on the eastern side of the Hudson River. So the Hudson River runs from all the way up in Lake Champlain at the top of New York State, all the way up basically into Canada, all the way down right along the sides of the banks of Manhattan. We are in that swath of land that's to the east of that, but to the west of the Connecticut border, and that's the Hudson Valley. Our campus is, I would consider it a rural campus, as you can see here. Not a lot going on right immediately around campus. We have beautiful rolling hills and a lot of space for our boys. We, in fact, just purchased 90 acres off the backside of campus, which is something that we're hoping to develop into low ropes courses, potentially a high ropes course. We already have a 2-acre working farm in that space. So we're hoping to grow that as well. But this is home, and what you're looking at here is the quad. I'm actually, if I turn to my right, I'm actually looking at that quad from my windows, which are hidden just behind the trees on the bottom portion of that big brick building. So I have a pretty incredible view, and I get to watch the boys walk by my office most days, and I can see their smiling faces and them joking around, which is great. So long as I'm not on the road. So why all boys? That's typically the big question that we get in general, not just from an international family, but from any family. And the real reason is that boys learn differently than girls. And I'm not saying that our education that we have would not be great for girls. It would be. but we know that it is built specifically for boys, and we understand boys. We've been doing this for a very long time. And the fact is that cognitively, boys have different brains than girls, and they, in general, learn at a different pace. Their prefrontal cortex, for any of those that have teenagers, understand that that's still in the developmental phase. And those decisions that boys are making and how they go about learning is certainly a little bit different than girls. We celebrate that, right? We encourage that. We encourage those boys to find themselves. We encourage the boys to look into the things that they love. We want to celebrate those gifts and talents and develop those passions. In general, our education is very hands-on. So we are a school that we want to continue to make our boys active. Again, that's how boys do learn best. You see that one line, how do they learn best? They learn by doing, they learn by acting, physically using their hands, moving around the space. And you'll hear about a couple programs that were specific. A lot of schools will say, oh, we do active learning and engaged learning. Ask them for specific examples because it's important that's how they follow up, and that's what we do. So the first thing that we have that creates that kind of environment, is that we have the Institutes for Active Learning. So we go to school Monday through Friday, and then Saturday, since we are a 7-day boarding program, Saturday we don't do classes, but we have required periods each Saturday morning from around 9:30 to 11:30, about 2 hours. And each one of these institutes that you see here, the environmental stewardship, entrepreneurship, citizenship, and leadership, rotate each Saturday. So most Saturdays, we will have options from around 12 to 15 different activities that the boys can sign up for within the confines of those institutes. So, for example, the environmental stewardship, we might have kids up at the farm, which you're seeing a picture of there. We might have kids evaluating zero waste from our dining hall. We might have students that are picking up waste around campus. We might have students that are evaluating our cooling and heating days, right? So of a more academic pursuit, but understanding the environmental impact that our buildings have in terms of how much air they're letting in and out. So there's a lot of different options within that framework. So boys have the ability to pick something they like. And I think we all understand, and everybody understands this, you typically enjoy things more that you get to choose. And so giving boys that autonomy of what they can choose really helps support that learning process. Now, that said, for example, though, our leadership program, we did a campus-wide game. If you're familiar with the board game Risk or Settlers of Catan, if you're not, it's a game where you have the ability to kind of negotiate and compromise and work together with neighboring countries represented in the game. And that's what we set up physically on our campus, physically on that quad. And so our boys had resources that they represented from their nations, and they had to communicate and compromise with their neighbors as well as afar across the other side of the quad. It was so much fun for the boys that they didn't want to leave to go to their games in the afternoon, which we had to eventually put a stop to it and say, let's go. We have to go to our games. So these are designed to be activities that allow boys to think outside the box. It's not a math class or a history class. It allows them to really engage in different activities and start to define what it is that they're interested in. And why that's important for the boys is it kind of culminates in this practicum or this winter session. And that's a time period between the United States Thanksgiving and the winter break that we have, which is about a 2.5 week period. Within that time period, our 7th through 10th graders do winter projects, which again are going to be, you have 10 to 15 different projects to choose from. I'm sure boys will be able to figure something out that they enjoy. And then they're going to work exclusively on those projects with help from the faculty and having faculty advisors. And in fact, the winter projects are interdisciplinary. So there's always 2 different faculty members that represent each project. Our juniors or 11th graders will do a global collaborative challenge where we place them in a group of 5 or 6 students, give them world problems to solve, and unlimited resources to solve those problems for them, and give them 2.5 weeks to do it, and tell them then that they have to present this in 12 minutes. And so the roller coaster for the boys there tends to be 12 minutes. That's such a long presentation. And then by the end of the 2.5 weeks, they're struggling to be more concise to get that into that 12-minute period. And it's pretty incredible to see the boys become these experts, if you will, in these little fields that they're looking at and exposing and or researching. And other examples, you see some at the bottom there. Other examples would be the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. But the fun part of that would be that we can look at that Great Pacific Garbage Patch from an environmental standpoint, obviously, but from an entrepreneurial standpoint, and certainly from a leadership standpoint. How are we going to manage this project? How are we going to oversee this project? So that's where the Global Collaborative Challenge, we could have one problem and we can ask our boys to solve it in many different ways. And so that's where those institutes become unique, in that boys can start to define what it is and what kind of major, kind of like a college, you would commit to a major, but obviously those categories are quite large. And then lastly, that will end in their senior independent project. Throughout the fall, they'll start to define that project, and then they will begin working on that. We have a ton of different options that boys can do, but what we found was almost all of their senior independent projects fell within these 4 categories. And so almost all of their projects could be defined in one of these categories, including the original music, right? I mean, that's entrepreneurial. That, you could put that in the citizenship. You could put that in leadership, depending on how you're going about creating it. So almost all of these, certainly the charity spike ball tournament, that's entrepreneurial. We had boys that created our welcome acceptance video this year, which was really cool. So he came to me and said, I'd like to shoot a video welcoming the boys that we accept to school, and I'd like to send that. And lo and behold, he created an incredible video that we probably had more comments on that than anything else that we did as an admissions office. And again, that was all made by that student, driven by his thought process and his ingenuity, which was a ton of fun. So those are 2 very specific ways that we engage our boys, both physically, but also in an environment that is holistic, as opposed to here's your math class, here's your science class. We're able to do that because we're all boys. What we also have, which makes Trinity Pawling a little bit more unique, is we have a Center for Learning Achievement. Our English Mastery program, you likely hear English as a second language. I'm a little partial to that because my wife is from Canada and speaks fluent French. And so any other language that she learns is actually her third language, not second language. And so much like most of our international students, that English mastery makes more sense as opposed to English as a second language. So our English Mastery program is a 2-year program. It is curriculum-based, meaning that it is not just here's how you learn how to do it or just learn how to speak. It's a development of their understanding of the language, from grammar all the way through to the composition and comprehension of that learning. So for those reasons, we as a school feel really confident being able to take students that might have lower TOEFLs or English proficiency tests than most other schools. And having worked at Kent School, as I mentioned earlier, we wouldn't really accept students, and it stated it on the website, unless they had over 100 TOEFL. That is not Trinity Pawling. We feel confident in our abilities to take a student that might not have a great TOEFL, but has the drive and motivation, and make that student a much better student. And if they started an 80 TOEFL, we feel really confident that they will be much higher than that 95 threshold, which most colleges require to be accepted. And so that's kind of that benchmark. But this English Mastery program is a 2-year program. I will be honest, most of our international students do not partake in the executive skills program or our language through an enrichment analysis and development. That LEAD program is a language-based learning difference program, which if you're learning English and you have a learning disability in terms of a language-based learning disability, it makes it that much harder. So we tend not to see a lot of students that will cross over these programs. Not to say we haven't. In general, though, our entire school, we have about 15 to 20% of these students, or the students from this group here, that's what that represents, that student body is about 15 to 20%. They are fully integrated in all of their other classes aside from those English classes. And that's where we feel really confident to give the boys a unique experience, that their math class and their history class and their science class are taught at the same pace as everybody else. It's fully integrated, but they have that support from their English mastery program teacher. How do we ensure that our boys are going to be successful? Well, I touched a little bit upon that engagement that we have, which certainly helps with our boys. But we also have these other bullet points here. And I'll allow you to read those bullet points, but those small class sizes, and anecdotally from my experience at a boarding school, you can't hide in class anymore. There's no way to hide and say, oh, I'm just going to fade into the background here. You have to be engaged every day. If you didn't do your homework, it's pretty obvious. So that's really not an option for our boys to not do their homework. They tend to be able to be pretty on time with those types of things. The small class sizes, the access to teachers, about 90% of our teachers live on campus. And therefore, our students have access to seeing them, not just in the class or even during the academic day, but they can see them outside of the class day as well, maybe even as a coach or a dorm parent. But if they need extra support from that teacher, they can get it. We also have some other specific supports in terms of our reading and writing lab, which is staffed throughout the day. So if a student needs just immediate help on an essay or needs a clarification on something, they typically can get that in a pretty quick fashion from that reading and writing lab. Now on to the stuff that I loved as a student and didn't realize how important the academic side was and how much I actually did enjoy the academics, but the athletics and our extracurricular activities. So we, as an all boys school, as I mentioned at the forefront, we want to keep our boys active, and we got to get that energy out somehow. And so we do require that our students partake in 3 different activities: our fall, winter, and spring. It certainly can be a sport, as you see here, that are listed on the right-hand side of the page. But in general, we have, just like our classes, we have advanced placement classes all the way to honors, accelerated and regular level classes. Same thing with our athletics. We have our varsity, which is our highest level, our junior varsity. We have thirds as well. So for those students that are just trying to learn how to play the game or have fun and enjoy that camaraderie of having teammates, we have that level for students as well. All teams have tryouts. And so not to worry if you feel like you're quite an exceptional soccer player. That's great. Show up to campus. You'll have an opportunity to showcase your skills, and we'll find the right fit for your son. That said, if your son is not that interested in athletics, it's all right. We have the ability for them to partake in performing arts. And so we do a drama in the fall. In the fall. In the winter, we do some one-act plays. The spring, we'll do a spring musical. But in general, the arts are thriving at Trinity Pawling. Our choir is incredible. Our students have the ability to be a part of a number of different bands and or learn or continue with instruments that they love. And then with the fine arts, again, we have within that fine arts, we do have drawing, painting, we have woodworking, we have pottery. We have a lot of different options. Again, that woodworking and pottering, working with their hands, the boys getting their hands dirty. They tend to love those activities, which is quite fun. And then lastly, that performing arts, and we have a number of different options. And one thing I will say about all of our teachers and coaches and our teachers within the arts, they're so passionate about what they do. They love what they do, and that passion rubs off on our students in a good way. And so that's something that is really important. The clubs at Trinity Pawling. So our students are all required to be a part of a club. And those clubs are outside of those afternoon activities that were just listed, whether it was the athletics and arts. But here are some of my favorite clubs that we have on campus. The fishing club will do some fishing on our pond on the backside of campus, as well as make a trip. This is the Housatonic River, and they will fish there. That's certainly there's going to be a club advisor with them, so we don't just drop them off at the river and say have fun for the day. But we'll have a club advisor there. We have a dog walking club. A lot of students are partial to our about 30 dogs that we have on campus, and so they enjoy taking them out for walks and during their free blocks and having fun and kind of creating a dog park mentality, which is kind of fun. And then lastly, our drone club, which I wish there were drones when I was at school. I would have definitely been a part of this, but I feel like I missed the boat on it. But we do have a drone club, which is where we got that initial picture that you saw of the campus, that campus I shot. That was a student taken photo, or student produced photo, which is pretty cool. But there's over 50 clubs to choose from chess to community service to gaming there's a ton of different clubs. The idea is that we want our students to be active and meeting new people and engaging in our community. Required for one club, most students will be a part of 2 or 3 different clubs in a genuine fashion. On to the next portion of what we do at a high school, boarding school, a preparatory school, is we prepare students for college and the next steps. The one thing about this list of schools here, it's a great list of schools. There's some really impressive schools on there. But one thing I can promise you is that every single student that went to these schools and the other schools that aren't on this list is that they were prepared for these schools. They're prepared to take on the challenges of these schools. And for the students that went to Ivy League schools, they're ready for those schools. For the students that ended up at a University of Michigan, they're ready for that school. For the student that ended up at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, which is a highly regarded engineering school, he's ready to take on that challenge of that school. And so we as a school prepare students, our boys, to be ready to take on that challenge and more specifically, not be leaving those schools after a year, right? They're prepared and they know they're making the right decision because they know themselves and they know what they're interested in. This list represents a wide range of schools. You do see those Ivy League schools. You see the little Ivies, if you will, the NESCAC schools, as they're called, the Wesleyans, Trinity colleges. Those are the types of schools that you'll see that are widely popular. Tufts is another example on this list. Widely popular with a lot of our boys. They're small. They're in New England. They have a lot of the same sports that we do. It's liberal arts. But you also see on this list big universities, right? You have the Northwestern, you have Michigan, you have those schools that represent a lot of different options. The student that did go to Michigan that we have on this list here went to go to their business school, undergraduate business degree. Well, that's because other schools in this list, like Cornell, doesn't offer that at the undergraduate level, right? And so that's where, there's these students are picking these schools because it's the right fit for them and they're ready to take on those challenges. But our college counselors are there to help from as soon as a student walks on campus to the moment that they get their acceptance and make their decision on where to enroll. But in general, we will have a kickoff meeting, which will take place in their students' junior year, right before the winter break, because that tends to be when the college counseling office is done with the seniors at that point, because all of their applications are in, and they can shift that focus to those juniors right at the kind of that January mark of their junior year. And so you'll get a full year of really hands-on engagement from the college counselors that we have on campus here, getting to know the boys. We have about 200 schools that will visit our campus. And so for those that it's more challenging to travel to those colleges will come to us and you'll get to learn quite a bit about them. So if you start with a list of 30 schools, by going to those talks and asking the questions that are important to you, which we feel like we've armed our students with those experiences to be able to understand what they like and what's important to them, they'll be able to narrow that list down. And then by working with that college counselor, they can even more, find that right fit for them in terms of the schools that they should be applying to. Dorm life. What's it like to live here on campus? So incoming students, we will send out a kind of a dorm form, if we will, or our dorm recommendations and have a student complete this. Part of that, that dorm form that we have is we will ask students 2 really important questions. And it tends not to be interests that we make those roommate matches. But there's two questions. Is a student messy or unorganized? And is a student neat? And there's a scale. And where do you fit on that scale? That's question one. Part two of that question is, how okay are you? Are you all right with a student that is messy, or that a student that is very much so needs to be neat? We find that students that are messy and students that are neat tend not to get along. We find that students that expect it to be messy and students that expect it to be neat tend not to get along. So we try to make those student matches based off of that. That's question one. And the second question is, and I think this is important, as an extrovert, somebody that is energized by meeting new people. I'm excited, and I start my day with everybody on this call here. I'm excited about that. But that's me, and we recognize that there's a lot of students that are introverts, and so they tend to be looking for a space to recharge. So we ask a question of, in your dorm room, do you want it to be a social space, or do you want it to be more of a quiet space? And again, for those students that want that social space, when the time is right, obviously not during study hall, but when the time is right, those students tend not to get along with the students that are looking for that room to be their safe haven, where they can recharge the batteries and be able to be quiet in their own quiet space for a little bit. So we try to find those mixes and matches for that roommate questionnaire that we'll send out. But certainly we love to be able to find those matches with interests, but we do find that those two questions are key. Most students will have one roommate. It's two students to a room. My apologies. And what you're seeing in these pictures here is that obviously a student has this room on the left-hand side here that has a quiet space. He's doing some reading. The other two boys look like they're doing some studying quietly, but that's being respectful in the room. The second room that you see here looks like boys are playing some video games, which we do allow, not at all points throughout the day, but throughout the certain times that we have. This might be a weekend here, and so you have the ability for those boys to have some fun and enjoy themselves and cheer their friends on, and be laughing and create that social scene as we talked about in that room. And then lastly, you have some boys kind of getting together that looks like that's during the class day, because they're in their class dress there. And that's kind of what that dorm life is like for the boys. We do have a number of different residences on campus. There's about 8 or 9 different campuses on campus. Each one there are at least 1 or 2 faculty members that live in every single dorm. Not in a dorm room like a boy, but they have their own apartment that is attached to the dorm. The dorm that I'm actually looking at, that's just outside my window here, it has 2 separate families that live in those dorms. And so there are 3-bedroom apartments that are attached to the dorm, and both families have two children. And so that's their home. And so while they're on duty, they will open the doors to their home. And if a student needs to heat something up or make something in the microwave, they can go, obviously ask, but they get to go into that faculty member's home because they're a part of their family. It is a very intimate environment in that sense, that the boys do feel more like it's home, and they're where they live, as opposed to a more traditional dorm that has, here's your common room, you go there, and we keep our doors shut as faculty members. It really is an environment that the boys feel like they're a part of their lives. I will say that I use a number of the different boys as babysitters for my children. I think it's wonderful. I know my son loves it, because we do have a pond on campus, and the boy babysitters tend not to have a problem going to catch the tadpoles and frogs and turtles. And my son loves all that stuff, where so my wife and I will utilize the boys on campus that have that ability and want and desire to work with little kids. So that's always fun too. But that's part of us being in this community. So lastly, I had mentioned earlier about our area, our local area. So we're in the Hudson Valley. This is a picture taken just a little bit west of our campus. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunities around the Hudson Valley to visit other exhibits or historical sites, or do some hiking. You saw the fishing. There's some great places to eat in the area. These are typical things that we will either do during the academic day, as you're seeing the Hudson Valley Historical Site there, But you're seeing that Appalachian Trail hike, that might be a weekend activity. And typically the weekend activities, a lot of it revolves around food. Magically for the boys, they love to include food in whatever activity that we're doing on the weekends. But that's where we're really lucky to have a lot of options in the immediate area. And then specifically the town of Pawling. The town of Pawling is about a 10-minute walk from our campus. And so on the weekend, they're welcome to walk into town. There's a little pharmacy that has some groceries in it, but there's also a number of restaurants and places that kids can get a bite to eat. If they need a more formal grocery store, we typically make those runs on the weekends as well, and or trips to the malls, to the movie theaters. And then, we'll make trips down to New York City. I don't know if I skipped that, but we'll make trips down to New York City to see either Yankees games or Mets games or New York Rangers hockey games. We'll go to museums, we'll go to art exhibits, we'll do those types of things because it's a short ride down to New York City. But I feel like I've done quite a bit of talking here, which is okay. So I'm going to put this video on and I'll allow you all to watch it. And then we'll circle back after that. Oops. Back to that.
We call ourselves the Pride. We are 300 brothers strong. We come from many states and nations, many backgrounds and walks of life. We come to Trinity Pawling for one basic reason: to find that spark of greatness deep inside and to fan it to a flame. We come to learn from teachers who are masters of their fields, who challenge us, understand us, stand behind us 100%. We make this campus our proving ground, our playground, our home. If you're looking to dig deep, Trinity Pawling is for you. If you want to know how it feels to have 300 brothers in your corner, the Pride is ready to welcome you in. And once you're here, you'll discover learning isn't about absorbing knowledge. It's about putting what you know into action, asking the right questions, coming up with answers you never thought were possible. It's about giving your all to everything you undertake. Along the way, you'll find that spark of greatness you've been carrying around inside. You'll discover it takes many forms: a balanced equation, a perfect pass, a moment of kindness, an unexpected idea. It's all about discovering how you will shine and contribute to the world around you. Because at Trinity Pawling, we believe great men are needed everywhere, and you are one of them. Greatness lives in you.
Great. Thank you for watching. And I'll just go kind of back to this page here as that was the end of our slideshow. I did see one question that came in, which is a great question. How often do parents communicate with their sons and how do they do it? There's a number of different ways that they communicate with their sons. I would say most boys are generally in communication either through text, WhatsApp, WeChat. Those are the different types of modes of communication that are typically the fastest for a lot of our boys. But that's where with each child, each student has an advisor. And if your son is not reaching out to you as much as you want, then you can reach out to that advisor and say, hey, let my son know I need him to talk to me a little bit more. And I actually had that experience as an advisor at my previous school. I had a student that was doing tremendously well, he was having actually too much fun was the problem, and was forgetting to call home and saying, excuse me, saying hello and I love you to mom. And mom wasn't very happy with the whole situation. And so it was my role as the advisor to go to that student and say, hey, look, I know you're doing really well here, but you need to be able to share with mom and dad that how well things are going. And so we established when he could be able to call them and find that time to reach out to them. Certainly with the time difference for students, located on the other side of the world, they tend to be calling in the morning or the evenings, kind of to start their day or to end their day here at school with the parents. But it really is. There's plenty of time for boys to do that. We do have Wi-Fi enabled calling as well, right? So students can make calls through WhatsApp, through WeChat, whatever mode of communication that they have. That's something that is certainly encouraged for our boys. We always have Zoom like we are on right now too, or FaceTime, that something along those lines. I myself, I try to call my mother every day just because I don't want to hear it from my mother. I know some boys want to call home once a week, but it just depends on that family. But great question.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I have to say I'm super jealous that you're able to use those boys as babysitters to watch your boys.
We love it. It's incredible.
I mean, it's awesome. By doing that, you're also making the boys feel like, they are really in a family. It's not just they're going there for their education. They are part of the family, just like they get to also, especially for international students. I mean, they get to really witness seeing that, yeah, American families are just like that, just like us, just like that. Everybody has their family. So I think that's really awesome. And I also love how you guys determine who gets to be together as roommates, who's messy, who's not. That's awesome as well. And again, I think the whole idea is, the school really truly respect their students' choices. I mean, you cannot try to make a messy student to just all of a sudden become really neat or vice versa, right? So I think that I really see that, students, their opinions being respected by the school, which I really appreciated. And I found that dog walking club is awesome as well.
That's why I picked my favorites.
I mean, a lot of boarding schools. I'm sure you all have very strong, excellent faculty on the campus to support the students. But I see something different here. You guys support this engagement and socialization. Just a whole bunch of boys getting together. I sometimes feel like dogs like to play with a lot of boys because somehow they feel like boys are kind of like their playmates. Right. So I think that's awesome. And not only you are fostering the boys, yes, you guys can be boys, you can be you. You also are fostering these kind of kindness and taking care of others. And there's responsibilities, I think. So I think that's a great aspect that you guys are providing as well. So thank you so much. And there are so many, I took a long note here. There's so many stand out. I cannot even finish listing every single aspect of it right now. But we do have some great questions that I do wanted to help the parents ask you. So when they register, they also leave their comments and their questions. So one of the questions typically, I think you kind of mentioned it already, why boys schools? And I think that a lot of parents, they wonder, because, seem like all the schools, public school, private schools, a lot of them, the majority of them really are co-ed. So this why boys school is really a big question here. Yeah. So a lot of parents, they kind of went a little, went a little further down. They are wondering let's say they see a lot of sort of sports opportunities for the boys. Now they are curious, like, what does that do to prepare the boys, let's say, for their college or for their future? What's the benefit of, like providing them these type of physical sort of activities being one of the questions?
Absolutely. So that's a great question. And to try to be more specific about all boys, having been a teenage boy, I had no idea what I wanted and no idea what I wanted to do, but I know I wanted to do things. I wanted to try things. And I went to a co-ed school, and having gone to a co-ed school, I absolutely can say that I chose not to try things because I was nervous that the cute girl was going to see me and judge how I was singing or how I was performing or what I was doing. And so I only really stuck to the things that I felt comfortable with. And that's not really the environment that we want to create, right? And especially for the formation of finding those passions and those gifts and talents that our boys have, which is part of our mission statement. At this age group, right, that 13, 14, 15, all the way through 18 years old, there is so much that is growing and learning. And where a boy starts and where a boy ends here is they are very different places. And so we feel really confident that the environment that we provide allows boys to find themselves. It allows them to figure out who they are and what they want. And all the while, they're learning how to be gentlemen. They're learning how to be good individuals, good roommates, good friends, good people, good sons by calling home, right? But that all said, we still do a ton of different activities with girls' schools. It's not, the co-ed versus the single gender schools. We do find a lot of opportunities where that we feel confident that we can give our boys that opportunity to interact with girls. Some of it's, and I'll be honest, when I was at school, it was go to a dance and turn off the lights and turn on loud music. That's not what our boys want anymore. They want opportunities to go bowling or go do a community service activity or go to a show or go out to dinner at a nice restaurant with a bunch of people, not individually like a one-on-one date, but go with a bunch of people and connect that way. Those are the types of things that our boys are looking for. And I think they're looking for those things because they're more respectful, they're more understanding, they're more empathetic, and they're curious, right? And so we provide them that platform as an all boys school to do that in an environment that they don't feel like, if I wore brown shoes and a black belt, I'm not going to get made fun of by the girls for not looking sharp today, right? And that's kind of where we provide this kind of safe space for boys socially, more so than anything else, right? Socially and emotionally, we provide this safe space to allow them to grow and allow them to chase their ideas. And then academically, certainly we touched on how and why having all boys in a classroom is beneficial, but I think more so socially and emotionally, and hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you. That is really, really helpful. I really appreciate it. It's really just been a big question here. Parents are like, well, are you guys promoting boys' school, girls' school, But I mean, it's really all about good fit, I think, and you guys provide all the different levels, let's say, sport choices as well, to the students. And again, it's just all about you need to find your good fit like that.
And girls are distractions to teenage boys. From the study standpoint, right? I mean, I worked in a school. The boys were always like, I got to get to the library. I'm like, no, you don't. You just want to go see the girls there. So they end up actually doing more work here and studying more because there's no distractions, which is another kind of funny piece.
Right. Well, thank you. Now, another question is, so some of the parents say they really do notice, Trinity Pawling, is such a great school. And they are, of course, curious about then what are you guys looking for, like characteristic wise, like what type of students are you looking for? Now, do they have to take any standardized tests are the test scores requested? Do you have like a specific standard, like a specific number of, let's say, I think earlier you mentioned there, like TOEFL score, for example, do they have to reach to a certain grade point?
Yeah, great question. So I think what all schools has changed in the last 2 years, right? As we've gone through COVID here, COVID-19, what all schools are looking for is adapted and changed. So the nuts and bolts, yes, we're going to be asking for teacher recommendations and grades. And if a student has been at an English speaking school for three or more years, we generally are not going to be requiring a TOEFL. We will confirm that by doing the interview, which is another required portion of that. If a student is not at an English speaking school, we will require that TOEFL, and that is for them, right? We want to make sure that they're going to have an academic experience here that is not too taxing and that is fair to them, but also that we can support them. Generally speaking, I would say students that are in the high 70s, low 80s, that's kind of that's our floor in terms of that TOEFL score. Anything above that, we feel really confident in working with that student, certainly on their English capabilities, and also that when they're in those other integrated classes, they'll be able to get by. Whereas the students that tend to be a little bit below that, it makes it so challenging for them in those history and math classes because the language barrier is too much. And so that's where we do kind of draw the line there for a student. But what are we looking for? First and foremost, I want a boy that wants to be here, right? I don't want a boy that has to be here. I want a boy that wants to be here. A boy that is excited about the opportunity that Trinity Pawling has, excited about our academics, excited about our institutes for active learning, somebody that's willing to try new things, somebody that's excited about our athletics and our extracurriculars, somebody that wants to take advantage of learning how to ski or learning how to go fishing, or those are the types of boys that we want. I want a boy that wants to be here. And generally speaking, we're able to root that out through our admissions process pretty easily, because there are some boys that are just coming because their parents are telling them they have to. That's not the boy we want. We want a boy that's really excited and that the parents are really excited. That makes this whole experience that much better. In general, we have a lot of what we'll call neurodiversity on campus, right? And that means that we have students that are in 4 APs and are knocking it out of the park in the classroom and never needed an ounce of support. But we also have those students on the other side of that spectrum, right? That you saw might have a language-based learning difference or executive skills. Those students are no less smarter, right, than any of those other students, but they think in very different ways. And so I think that we are looking for that range of students. And within that range, when we have that student that needs that language-based learning difference, I want them to be just as excited about all the opportunities we have here, as well as that student that is a straight A student that's taken all the hardest classes. I want him to be just as excited about trying all the new things that he hasn't had an opportunity or access to as well. So that's really kind of what we're looking for. And then beyond that, we feel confident that we will make boys gentlemen. We make them into men. But we certainly will be looking through that application to make sure that their teacher recommendations, there aren't any red flags of them that behaviorally, right? We want to have good students and good character boys on campus as well. That's kind of a given for us. But that's certainly something else that we look for.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Now, to be a little more specific, what about SSAT score or ISE type of scores?
Yeah, those are optional. Sorry, I left that out. Those will be completely optional. I'd say about 10% of our students that applied this year submitted SSAT scores. And again, I look at that in all fairness to the students that do or don't. I look at that as a talent, right? If you're a really great test taker and you're going to score in the high 80s, low 90s, 99 percentile, that's a skill. That's no different than a boy sending me a video of him playing basketball or hockey, right? That's a skill set that if you want to share that, I am willing and more than happy to read through it. I certainly didn't score that on my SSATs, and so I'm always impressed with the boys that score really well. That's great, but it's looked at as a skill set as opposed to something that we will evaluate on. So no need to support, just have to send it in.
Appreciate it. I know a lot of, especially international students, they feel really, really like nervous or anxious about it, just because, I mean, they learn all these math classes, history classes, however the language used there is a little different. So it adds on a little extra pressure on them, but it's not like they're not academically strong. They are very academically strong, and they are great students. However, with, again, dealing with different languages, it really adds on a lot to them. So I really appreciate that opportunity as well. Now, here's another question. Tina asks, she said, if students need to attend some sort of tournaments or competitions and events, how would the school support that?
So yeah, just to clarify this question, is this a sport or an activity that is not part of Trinity Pawling, or is this part of Trinity Pawling, say our basketball or soccer, baseball teams? If it is within Trinity Pawling, if they have an away game, we will provide that transportation. We have mini buses that we will take students, and if they're part of larger teams, we will get coach buses to take students to and from games. No different than if we're going to go down to New York City, we'll provide that shuttle service. If it's a outside of Trinity Pawling's sanctioned event, we'll use a student that is exceptional at chess and has to get to, an international chess competition, which is pretty cool. And I've had a student that had to do that before. Yes, as long as the school knows about it ahead of time and it's not going to be prohibitive for them, like they can't miss a month of school, but if they need to miss, a handful of days or a weekend, those are things that tend, as long as the student's in good standing, and they're following the rules on campus, that's something that we're more than happy to make happen for them.
Thank you. I hope that answered your question, Tina. Now another question. All right. Yeah, feel free to type in the chat, the group chat. All right. So I'll move on for now, and then we'll come back to if you have further questions. All right. So another big question, though, is that we've seen lots of again opportunities to get the boys ready for their future, but I think parents need a little help to make this connection. So after entering Trinity Pawling, and boys have these opportunities to be engaged, to learn, to develop their academic skills and all kinds of skills. Now, how do these connect to their college prep? How would you be, let's say, very confident that your boys, after leaving Trinity Pawling, they are all going to shine once they enter their college?
Yeah, great question. So we have at Trinity Pawling, we have what is called our effort challenge. And this is how I know our boys are going to be successful at the next level. Our effort challenge is a grade that students receive based on their effort in an academic setting. So in the classroom, they get a grade on their effort. How do you grade someone's effort? Are they showing up to class? Did they do their homework? Not how well they did their homework, but did they do their homework? Are they in dress code? Are they engaged in the class? Are they participating? Are they asking questions? That's how an effort is going to be determined in the classroom. But that effort challenge extends beyond the classroom, and it extends to the dorm. It extends to their club. It extends to their athletic team or after school activity. And so at the end of each kind of 6-week mini term or 6-week half term, we will post what that effort challenge is. 1 is the best, 5 is the worst. For us, that's how families and parents will know how hard their son is working, and how hard they're challenging themselves. And so for us, I feel really confident that we instill a work ethic. We instill that grit and determination. but also that self-advocacy as well, right? So part of that classroom grade, that classroom effort grade is that if a student isn't doing well in class, there's an expectation that they go to that teacher and they ask that teacher for additional support. Now, we certainly teach our boys how to go ask those questions, and we teach them how to be advocates for themselves, but we want them to be engaged. And if they leave here in that groups 1 and 2 that we have, those scoring in that 1 and 2 categories, I promise you they'll be successful wherever they go and whatever they do, because they'll know how to advocate for themselves. They'll know how to be self-reliant. They'll know how to be engaged, and that's half the battle. But they'll also understand what it means to work and challenge themselves and have a little bit of that grit, determination, and those character traits that if they can apply that to something they love, the sky's the limit. So that's how I know that we can specifically track our students and know how well they're going to do at that next level in terms of college. So I didn't really even mention anything about academics, but our teachers are fantastic too. We have some of the best teachers, and I think it's close to around 75% of our faculty have advanced degrees. So they're really, really knowledgeable folks, but they're also committed to teaching boys in high school. But I think more importantly, you have a boy that comes in that needs to develop that little bit of grit and determination and understand that effort. And for parents, I feel like it's a really helpful piece too, right? If you have a student that is not a great English student or not a great history student, and they get a C in that class, and a parent's like, oh my goodness, that's the end of their academic career, but you see their effort grade is at the highest level, it's a 1. Well, as a parent, I would say, keep doing what you're doing. Because if you don't like history, that's totally fine. Nobody makes me do history, right? And so when they get beyond high school and into college and university and beyond, they get to choose the things that they love. And so if he has the ability to work hard and put forth the best effort in that class, and his production is a C, I'm okay with that, right? It's the students that their effort isn't where it should be that we're able to identify and then correct that behavior to make sure that effort is at the highest level. That's where I think we succeed as a school and know that our boys will be successful at the next level.
That makes sense. That makes total sense to me. Thank you so much, Jeff. Yes, I totally agree. Really, like when we look at our students and go like, yeah, you're not making enough effort, and that is very likely why you're not performing, as well as we thought you really should be. Or you've already made your best effort, and then in some ways they're self-assessing, evaluating. They can look at a very solid piece of paper or score to go, oh yeah, maybe I really should make a little better effort here, and then there's room for me to improve. That makes perfect sense. Thank you so much. All right. Yes, so Tina should say yes, her questions, those competitions and tournaments were about activity, competition that's outside of school.
Yep. So, I mean, outside of school, so 2 of the 3 things that Tina listed there are the debate and musical performances. Debate we have, and that would be a school sanctioned event. But if a student is on an exceptional debate team, we'd certainly support that. From a musical performance, we do have our students that are doing musical performances here on campus. Again, if we have students that are beyond the reaches of what we have or what we can provide for them, and they need to continue to perform at a high level, we would certainly support that as well. And I actually gave that example of chess earlier as well. So that's certainly acceptable. Again, not every weekend, not every week. But if it's a long weekend here or a couple days there, that tends to be something that we work out, so long as their effort is where it should be, and they're doing well in their courses.
That sounds great. Well, thank you so much again, Jeff. It's a pleasure to have you here, and again, taking your time during this busy time in a year. So really appreciate it. And parents, we're going to end it right now. It is already actually a little past 10 o'clock. And so if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to us, email, WeChat. I'm going to put up our, so you know how to reach out to us. But again, thank you so much, Jeff. Let me share this with you all. Here we go. Here are all the ways that you guys can reach out to us. You can feel free to scan this QR code. You get a 30-minute free consultation. We'll be more than happy to answer your questions. All right.
Thank
you
you
guys, and have a good day, Jeff.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening, and don't hesitate to reach out to us to ask questions too. But use Maccabee Coaching; they're a tremendous resource, and we look forward to hopefully seeing some of your applications come through this fall. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
好了，现在可以打开麦克风，自由交流。Jenny，你在吗？
我在。家长有没有什么问题？你们可以提出，就是自己打开你们的麦克风就行了。
对，我觉得他这个还不错，他有这个英语语言的那个 support 这个项目，而且他可以，比如说不擅长考试的学生，比如说你真的是那个
我觉得
刷分刷不上，
对，我觉得其实我们就是也是希望提供给家长多方面的选择。其实这些都是非常非常好的学校啊，在美国当地也都是 very competitive 的学校，但是他们非常欢迎，对 international students 是非常非常欢迎的，所以他们也非常有自信，他们提供绝对足够的资源可以 support 可以支持国际学生，所以只要你的孩子，你的家庭是你的孩子，就是很对这个就是很多的活动就是很感兴趣的，他们看到你的 passion， 就是他们就会愿意录取你。我觉得当然基本的英语水平是需要的，但是他们不至于就用英语水平就把你所谓的就是把你刷掉了，不提供给你这样的机会，所以我觉得这是非常好的一个选择。
比较人性化，我就觉得，
是的，
而且是允许学生和用微信和家里面联系，这个也比较就是也是对国际学生的话比较那个人性化。之前有好几个家长就特地在那问，就说那么远，那就是说家长也没有办法直接跟老师去沟通，因为家长毕竟有隔着时差，而且语言也不通嘛。
对，
所以希望就真的就是听到一下学生的，因为有一些学校就特别严格，就不允许这种就是说这个沟通。对，这个他们还比较人性化。
是的，所以我觉得这也是其实蛮吸引我的一个地方。那像我在 Target 我在找学校的时候，其实我也都会把这个列入考量，因为毕竟孩子从这么远。假设说您的孩子在中国这么远到这边，或者是说您的孩子在美国的任何一州，你要把他送到一个 boarding school 去，其实我觉得这是很 it's very common， 就是 it makes sense that 你家长会想要跟孩子联系的。他们其实也重视到这一点了。刚刚 Jeff 也说了，其实你看像他自己就说了，他自己就会固定每一天都跟他妈妈联系。所以我想他也是其实非常重视这一点的，他们也都会就是给孩子这样的那个家长，其实你们也可以跟他们的就是所谓的 advisor 联系，说哎我的孩子这怎么都没有打电话回来等等的，所以我觉得这样的一个交流方式沟通方式是我觉得很正面的。
对，所以其实每个学校对，看家长们还有什么问题？如果没有的话，可以跟我们约。如果说想，不管是申请这个学校，还是申请in general 了解不同的学校的话，都可以通过那个扫我们那个二维码跟我们取得联系，进行一个免费的咨询。
是的。
然后现在时间也挺晚了，已经过了，那么很谢谢大家的时间。 好，
谢谢大家对教育的坚持，
对，特别是今天晚上哈，一个周五夏天，还是
是
OK， 好，那个我给你发信息了，这你过去看一下，
好
WeChat 上面，好，那我先下，
好。
好。